Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Calley, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's show. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. Before we get into today's show, I want to say a quick welcome to our new member of the week, Dr. Michael Hartman, a podiatrist with offices in Southgate. So welcome to Dr. Hartman and team. Brian, we have a couple of special guests, and of course, it's Data Monday, so let's dive right into the show.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. And as you see, I'm actually in a new location, but it's kind of a new old location. I'm home. There's about a year I did all of these from home or from my car. So at home and meet the resident fish in our home. It's great to have you back with us today. And I was actually really excited to invite our first guest. And before I get to her, I want to share with you a slide. And this comes from the Detroit News. It was in an article today, which shows of our 15 public universities. In red are the students, is the percentage of students that graduate and leave the state. Blue is the percentage of students that graduate and stay in the state. And you'll notice here, they're kind of in ranked order here. Oakland University definitely being on top of this list. So in other words, the proportion of students that graduate from Oakland University and stay in the state of Michigan after graduation is higher than any other school. And if you look across here, you'll see University of Michigan and the two of the universities in the UP that have a hard time holding people close. And so I had decided to reach out and invite, and was delighted that she was available to invite Dr. Ora Pescovitz from Oakland University, president of the university. And in full disclosure, I think it's come up before, I'm on the board of trustees for Oakland University, was appointed by Governor Snyder in 2018 and have served on that board. So since then. So Ora, thank you for being available and coming on. And what a great success Oakland University has been for the Michigan economy and in training up the workforce, but the success in keeping them here. So but let's back up a little bit, maybe just for an audience that might not know who you are, just a little bit about your background and your pathway to OU.
Sure. Well, I'm a physician. I'm actually a pediatric endocrinologist, and this is my second tour of duty in Michigan. I know that you'll be talking a little bit about healthcare later in the program, so I'll just mention that during my first time in Michigan, I served for a little bit over 5 years at the University of Michigan as CEO and Executive Vice President for Medical Affairs at the University of Michigan, and as CEO of the University of Michigan Health System, now known as Michigan Medicine. And now I'm delighted, since 2017, I'm in my 6th year as president of Oakland University. And I'm really thrilled to be president of Oakland because Oakland is a university where we have just under 17,000 students. A third of them are Pell Grant recipients. A third of them are first generation students. And as you pointed out so nicely in that graph, we have more students who, when they graduate, stay in Michigan than any other university in the state, and they contribute mightily to our economy.
And so maybe give a little insight about how is it, what's the difference? I mean, how is that accomplished? And when you see that, I imagine it's not just one strategy, but in order to keep that high of a proportion of students in Michigan, where do those students come from, and what do you think are the characteristics or the criteria that really results in such a high success rate in them staying in Michigan as compared to peers?
Yes, well, I think it's due to a number of factors. First of all, we like to think of ourselves as stewards of place. And what I mean by that is that many of our students come from the geography where we're located, and we focus very much on being good citizens of the state. and of the community where we're located. So one of our strategic goals is community engagement. And so we focus very much on being good partners with the community in public-private partnerships. So we're very interested in what you do at SBAM. We're very engaged in public-private partnerships. We care about the community and the businesses in the community. So in the 4 areas where we're primarily focused, healthcare being number 1, engineering and computer sciences, number 2, education, number 3, and business, number 4. Those 4 areas are our primary area of focus. We are integrally connected with the local community and those industries. And so our students, nearly 100% of them, have internships while they are students. And those internships tie them deeply to the local economy. And so because nearly every student has an internship while they are in school, they have usually more than one. Very often, those students will end up getting employed ultimately in one of those internships. The students do an outstanding job while they're interns, and the employer knows that they are outstanding students and eventually will become great employees. And so it is a bidirectional exchange. It is mutually beneficial, and there's no reason for them to look out of state. And as a matter of fact, when they are eventually graduating, they get very high paying jobs. In fact, the average salary of our graduates is higher than the average salary of graduates from other universities in the state, and the average salaries that are higher than the average salaries of graduates from students from out of state as well. And let me give you just one example of that. In engineering, in mechanical engineering and electrical engineering, our graduates' salaries are ranked 3rd and 10th in the country nationally. That means when I say 3rd, I mean only after Stanford and MIT. That means above universities like Purdue, University of Michigan, the top engineering schools in the country. And that's really remarkable when you think about it. And that's because they're getting employed in Michigan. They don't have to go out of state to get these very, very high salaries. And so we really have to work very hard to think about why should students, graduates of our best universities, leave Michigan to get employed elsewhere when they can get the 3rd highest salaries in the country by staying right here in Michigan.
What a powerful case that really is, and it speaks to the value in the marketplace of the degrees, but also the connections that the students make. So in other words, students are really putting down roots while they're getting their education, starting their career while they're getting their education, and then predictably are sticking around afterwards. So those employers kind of make sense that employers would give them higher starting salaries because they know what type of employees are going to be based on OU's reputation, and also because they were hired out of internships where there was experience going both ways. Final thing here before I let you go is Oakland University really has strong partnerships as well with community colleges, and it seemed like in some ways there's kind of resistance by some universities in accepting students and credits from community colleges, and yet Oakland University is kind of taken an opposite approach, which is to have transfer agreements, to have the type of system in place where students know if they start their education at a community college, they know exactly what those credits are going to be worth when they get to Oakland University, which really has made a big difference for students that otherwise maybe couldn't have afforded to start out straight away.
Right. We have articulation agreements with every community college in the state. And as a matter of fact, we are the #1 transfer school four-year university in the state. And we very much value and treasure our relationships with all the community colleges in Michigan. I think that it's a terrific way for many students to start in community college for many students who are either unprepared to begin in a four-year university or they're uncertain of what they want to do. It's a great place to start. It's more cost-effective for many of those students. And again, as I said, some students are unprepared to start in a four-year university. On the other hand, it's a very wise idea for them to work very closely with four-year universities so they don't waste their time when they're starting in community college and waste credits. So we work very closely with the community colleges to ensure that they have a very direct pathway to the career that they're going to choose, if it's going to be in nursing, or if it's going to be in engineering, or if it's going to be in education, whatever path they're going to take, so that they do that very efficiently and effectively. But we have a wonderful relationship with community colleges, and I think it's a terrific path towards a very successful career.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Ora Pescovitz, thank you so much for joining us today and laying out the difference that OU makes, and for being such a strong leader. And as folks from this watching this program would know, the areas of specialty there being business and healthcare and IT and engineering, along with education, some of the most critical areas with such high demand. And we didn't even get into the practicality of Oakland University having the type of education channels and the type of education pathways that are in such high demand out there. It really is a great example of the best way to do it. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for your service to SBAM and to your service to Oakland University. We're so proud of you as one of our trustees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, you can see, Sarah, why I'd put Ora Pescovitz in charge of anything. She's just such a great leader. We do have a lot more to get to on the show today. So I think what I'd like to do now, we have Scott Lyon. Now, you'll know Scott Lyon if you've been watching the show. He's on the SBAM team as well. And we wanted to cover just some kind of practical insight about what's coming up on the this open enrollment period that many businesses are approaching here as we get to the final quarter of the year for our members that offer their employees health insurance. Scott, what sorts of things do people need to know?
You're right, Brian. I think that a lot of our members renew their health insurance plan in the November, December, January timeline. And we just want to make sure that they think about this in a slightly broader term than just what their health insurance rates are going to do. It's that time of year when a lot of our members will receive the letter from their insurance carrier or the call from their insurance broker talking about the premiums that they pay for their health insurance plans. And unfortunately, those premiums, consistently year in and year out, they go up. There's no two ways about that. But knowing that, we also know that health insurance and employee benefits are critical in the effort to recruit and retain the employees that our members need to make their businesses function in the way they need to. We also know that health insurance is an expensive proposition. So given the fact that you need the employees to compete, and it's an expensive endeavor to go down with your employees, it's important that you get it right. And when I think about open enrollment, I think about the renewal, but I also think about it's the time of year where you want to take the pulse of your employees. And when I say that, I'm talking about is the plan that you're offering them today the right plan for your employees? And there's only one way I know of to get at the answer to that, and that is to talk to your employees or to offer them maybe a short survey. And some of the things that you're probably going to want to ask in the survey about the satisfaction they have with the health insurance plan and the network, the doctors and the hospitals, things like that. The satisfaction that they have with the benefits that are offered now, the deductibles, the co-insurance, the prescription drug plan. Do they understand how the plan works? And what can you as the employer do to help them better understand their health insurance benefits, what's important to them, and the trade-off between premiums, because all of our members at this point are probably sharing in the premium, the cost of the premiums with their employees. And we all know that, you know, the lower the deductible, the higher the premium, and the converse of that is true as well. But have a conversation about what's important to them. Is it more important that they have a low deductible plan, lower deductible plan, or is it more important that they save the money on the premiums with the high deductible? And then, you know, what kind of plans might work better for them? So I would start with that conversation, take the pulse of the employees. The second thing I think about when it's open enrollment time is take a look at your Section 125 plan. As I said, most all of our members are sharing in the cost of premiums with their employees right now. And if you're doing that, you really need to have a Section 125 or something called a premium only plan or a POP plan in place, because that POP plan will allow those contributions that your employees are making to be done on a pre-tax basis. So if you're sharing the cost of your premiums with your employees and you don't have a POP plan in place, you're costing yourself and your employees money. The second component to that is a flexible spending account, which allows the employees to make contributions to an account on a pre-tax basis to pay for things that aren't covered by their health insurance plan. So think about deductibles and co-insurance, but also think about things that everyone has over-the-counter medications, dental or vision expenses that aren't covered by the health plan. All of those are eligible for that flexible spending account, and, you know, putting that money aside and getting that done on a pre-tax basis as well. Again, having that in place will also help you compete with that large employer for that talent that you need. The third thing is compliance. And, you know, it's not just enough that it's a very expensive proposition, but the federal government makes some rules. And if you offer a health insurance plan to your employees, compliance is a requirement. And earlier this month, with the help of our friends at the American Society of Employers, we put out a checklist of compliance topics that every employer needs to understand. Because most of our members are fully insured, it's a little bit easier. So I would say make sure of two things. One, if you're changing plans, increasing deductibles, increasing the cost to your employees, there's a requirement that you tell them that. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can do that through a refresh of something known as a summary plan description or an SPD. And if you have one of those in place and you don't need to alter that, you can do it in a document that's called a summary of material modifications. Both kind of insider things, but as the employer, you are the plan sponsor and you do have these responsibilities. So there's no insurance company that I'm aware of that is making a summary plan description available to you as a small employer. That's your responsibility. So if you're offering coverage, make sure you have an SPD in place. It's also important because it's the very first thing that the folks that audit employee benefit programs come looking for. It's the EBSA is the agency of the government. They work on things like this. And if you're unfortunate enough to get the love letter from the Employee Benefits Security Administration, the EBSA, the very first thing that they're going to ask for when they come knocking on your door is your summary plan description. And if you don't have one, you're starting with 1 foot in the bucket as to begin. So make sure that you have that in place. If you happen to be enrolled in the SBAM sponsored Blue Cross or BCN program, we'll make that summary plan description available to you at no charge. So it's easy if you're enrolled with SBAM. If you're not enrolled with SBAM, you still need one. We can still help. It's not free, but we'll help. But just, as a word to the wise, make sure that you have that in place. That compliance checklist, look at that. Again, most everything on there is included in the summary plan description, but I can't urge you enough to make sure that you have those I's dotted and the T's crossed with your health plan.
It's one of those things that, a lot of times, business owners just running their business and don't necessarily know of all the legal responsibilities, and it's not a problem until it's a problem. And one of the things that we strive to do is, number one, make sure that you're aware of all the things that you have to do, but also if you do business with us, if you're in one of our plans, then something like the summary plan description is something that we will do for you, and at no additional cost. So that is one of the benefits, but also, just great overall advice. Talk to your employees and about the plan, what's important to them, and do your best to match up their priorities with your offerings. It's competitive out there, and looking at the workforce trends and our demographics, it's not going to get any easier. In fact, it's probably going to get more difficult to keep the workforce that you need. Scott, thanks for taking the time and coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Sarah,
so
we got a few more things on here.
We do. So Brian, you had an extremely busy week on the road last week. Of course, if you're a regular viewer, you saw us broadcast from our golf outing at the Medalist on Thursday. But before that, you and a few of our colleagues were in the Upper Peninsula attending a couple of events. Can you share a little bit about those engagements?
Yeah, we have strategic partnerships with local business organizations. It's very important as we have 30,000 members. We're all over the state, but it's important for us to be present physically on the ground with people across the state as well. So the SBAM team, or part of the SBAM team, including me, was up in Houghton and Marquette, and spent some time with some business organizations there that we work very closely with, and hearing from the business community in the Upper Peninsula. And not surprisingly, there were lots of parallels between the priorities that we heard about when we were there as well, the concerns about workforce shortages and keeping places fully staffed, in addition to some additional additional concerns regarding rising cost of energy. But we also did hear that it was one heck of a summer, that the tourism industry in particular really had a strong showing 2 years in a row now. And but there's a lot more to the UP economy than that. So we had a great time connecting with local members, a lot of good parallels, but really the rural issues in the UP, or the issues that people face in the UP, very similar to the more rural concerns. One of the issues that we've been very supportive of is Line 5 and the new tunnel underneath the straits to remove any kind of environmental risk from that pipeline. But we think of it in terms of gasoline needing to, or the oil needing to make it to the refineries to produce gasoline. But they also, that pipeline carries propane. And when you're in very rural areas, including most of the UP, the pipeline is absolutely critical for heating homes and businesses across the UP. So some parallels, some unique challenges as well, but a very, very strong and highly engaged business community that we saw from Houghton to Marquette in this round of visits.
Awesome. And then on Friday, you went to the Detroit Auto Show. Any takeaways from that event?
It was the first auto show since the pandemic, and they changed the time of year. It definitely felt toned down, but a lot of electrification, talk of electrification, but it was kind of one thing that kind of stuck out to me. So electrification, many fewer parts to electric vehicles. So the downstream impact on our supply chain, a lot of small businesses in Michigan over the next 20 years could be pretty substantial. But what really stuck out to me was that there was one manufacturer who, I don't want to say bucked the trend, but are definitely separating themselves and not going all electric, or not an approach of all electric in the future. So, and that was Ford. So they had the new Mustang, which is internal combustion engine, and also the Super Duty pickup trucks as well. And so really taking it more of an all of the above approach. So many other OEMs and manufacturers getting out of internal combustion engines has created an environment where they think that actually for them, it could be a growth market in the future, given the shrinking number of players that intend to be in that business in the future. So there's just an interesting and divergent strategy from other manufacturers, including General Motors. So Ford and General Motors taking pretty different approaches here.
Interesting. Let's move on to Data Monday as we wrap up today's show.
All right, I'm going to go back to the that slideshow, except for now let's see here. Actually, I think what I want to do, I think I know how to do this, right? So let me go back to the beginning here, and I'll run through these pretty quick because we're almost out of time. But yeah, here we go. All right, I'm going to go right back to the beginning. And first, NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, they do an optimism index, and you'll see here that both, while they actually in this last month a little higher than the previous month, still pretty low when you look at the current optimism and the outlook, but definitely good to see a little bit higher than it was just a little while ago. But in the same survey, and small businesses asked what their biggest concerns are, you notice here, this is inflation. Used to be no concerns with inflation. Now it's right up at the top. And then, but look at number 2. It's actually not taxes or the cost of labor, but it's the quality of labor. This is in yellow, the quality of labor being the number 2 concern, and staying up pretty high over the course really of the last 5 years. Then looking at the consumer price index, we talked about inflation last week when the numbers came out. Just wanted to show it on the graph and what it looks like. So you got the headline inflation, which is in blue, that's everything, and the stickier like core inflation, which takes the commodities of food and energy out. And you'll see that has been high, and actually is was up a little bit this last month. Looking again at the same survey with earnings, you'll see that earnings are down actually about a third. So that doesn't mean losses, okay? It just means that the profit's down about a third. And if you look at these recessionary periods here, you'll see that when profits go down here, profits go down here, profits go down here of small business, it's accompanied by recession periods. Now, it's not a guarantee. You see there's a very short recession here at the beginning of the pandemic, but business profits going down like this, historically speaking, small business profits are going down, means that and recession risks are higher. Also wanted to show here, this is retail and food services. It's why it's kind of tricky looking at economic data these days, because you'll see that while the overall year-over-year sales are up 9%, if you adjust for inflation, they're up less than 1%. So a lot of these numbers, when you look at when inflation is in play, it can make things that looks like a huge, robust increase, and yet consumers are experiencing an increase in cost, but to the business itself, with the inflationary type of pressures, a lot of that, the net real difference for business in retail and food, less than 1%. And then also just some expectations here on expected home prices. Now, they were very high before, so they're kind of coming back to earth. The question is, where is the bottom when it comes to home prices? But you'll notice that there's kind of an opposite trend here. Household income is still trending upward, but home prices falling pretty sharply. And 35% now of homes sold above the list price. And it wasn't that long ago when it was well over 50%, almost 60% were selling above the list price. So you see is that, again, kind of coming back down to normal. Now, this right where it's at right now is not concerning, but is it going to keep on going down? Is it going to level out? I think is a pretty big open question. And then the real average weekly earnings, you'll notice when you factor in inflation, even though wages are up and factor in inflation, the real average weekly earnings down over 3%. And that's it's one of the reasons why you see some discontent out there generally. And then I thought this is interesting, just this last unemployment report. So this is color coded. The darker the color, the better in terms of showing that whether the unemployment rate went up or went down. Those that were up tended to be on the coast. So you got the West Coast and the East Coast states are actually seeing their unemployment rise. And that was, as we see in Michigan, we have such a shortage in our workforce that I think that it's going to take a big decline in economic activity for our unemployment rate to start going up. But understand it is higher than the national average to start with. But given the shortages, it's not likely to go up until things get, unless things get worse economically. But a lot of crosswinds out there. I mean, these are predictable stories. You can see what's happening here. You can cherry pick information and say things look good. You can cherry pick and say it looks bad. The truth is it's a very mixed bag out there, and that creates a lot of uncertainty. But with higher interest rates, we know that capital intensive businesses and those that have highly leveraged businesses, those who have had to borrow and invest, including financing, are going to experience higher costs over the coming years, and or at least over the coming year. But there's good reason, I think, to believe that while inflation is still high, it does look like it's leveled off for the last few months. And usually once it levels off, if you're coming up, it means that it's going to start coming down. And that's what we would expect over the course of the next few months, but probably going to remain high for the next 6 to 12 months as it winds its way back down.
All right, well, obviously we'll keep an eye on those numbers as well as other economic indicators on future Data Monday segments. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back here Thursday at 3 o'clock. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks, everybody. See you on Thursday.